Hello and welcome to this session. Today we are going to learn how to create a very simple sample project in Selenium Python, and we will learn how to implement unit testing, page object model and HTML reporting in our Selenium Python project. So this is going to be very easy and very interesting, and if you are a complete beginner in page object model or unit testing or HTML reporting, do not worry. I'm going to start from scratch and we will go very basic step by step and learn how to create a simple login test, how to implement unit testing in our project, how to implement page object model, and we will also learn how to separate our test scripts from the web objects. We will also learn how to create a locators class or a separate class where we can store all our web element locators. We will learn how we can run our project from command line, and ultimately we will add some HTML reports in our projects. So some prerequisites are you should already be having Python on your system, and I already have a session on that. I will also provide the links to that session in the description section of this video, so you can see the description. And then you should have some IDE where we will create the project. So I'm going to use PyCharm, and you can use PyCharm or some other IDE. And then the Python libraries that I'm going to use are Selenium for our web automation, and then I'm going to use HTML test runner for our reporting. So let's get started, and I will go to my PyCharm. And before that, let me also show you the libraries that I have. I'm going to my command line and I will say pip freeze, and you can run this command only once you have Python and pip installed. So if you run this, you can see I have this Selenium library and I have this HTML test runner library as well. So you can say pip install Selenium. If you do not have this library, you can just install it. So this is pip install Selenium, and if you do not have it, it will download and install. In my case, it is saying requirement already satisfied, and similarly you can say pip install HTML test runner. So this will again install HTML test runner library. In my case, it is already there. So if I run this command, let me just run this again. Yes, it is running, and here it is saying requirement already satisfied. Now also one thing that you can check is you can run pip freeze, or you can also run pip list to check the list of libraries that you have for your Python. And if you want to check some particular library, for example I want to check Selenium, you can say pip show Selenium, and it will give you all the summary of this library, so you can check the name, version, summary, author and so on. And if you want to check if there are any broken requirements, you can say pip check and the library name. So I will say pip check Selenium, and it is saying no broken requirements found. So this is how you can check your libraries. And also let me give you some links so you can install Selenium, and here is the link. So I will go to this page, and also you will say pip install HTML test runner, and let me give you the link for this as well. So here are these two web pages. This is for Selenium, which shows us how to install Selenium. This is pip install Selenium, and if you want to read some documentation, you can go here, and it is available for Python 2.7 and 3.4 plus versions. And then this is for HTML test runner. Also you can see some documentation. I will copy this and paste it in the notes so that all these notes are available for you. And similarly I will copy this as well and paste it here, and all this will be available in the notes or description section below the video. So now let's get started. Now I already have a project. You can create a new project. So I'm not going to create a new project here. This I have already covered. What I will directly do is inside my project I have a sample projects folder here. So I'm going to create a new directory inside this sample project. So I will do a right click, new directory, and I will say this is POM demo. So this is page object model project, or I will say POM project demo, and say OK. Now here because we are going to create a page object model project, so I am going to create two folders inside the directory. So I will right click new directory. So the first is pages. I will have all the page classes inside this folder, and in a moment you will come to know why I am doing this. And then I will create another folder called tests, and I will have all my test classes inside this folder. So this was an earlier project. Let me just delete this. So I'm deleting this. So you can see this is the project structure. So I have created two folders, pages and tests here, and now I can start creating the test. So the very first thing is I have to create a simple login test. So inside the test folder I will create a new Python file, and I will say this is login, and you can see this is the file. So the very first thing is I will say from Selenium import WebDriver, and then I will create a variable called driver and say this is equals to WebDriver dot, and I will use the Chrome browser, and in the brackets I have to give the executable path for my Chrome driver exe. So you can see I have copied and stored the Chrome driver exe here, and this I have covered in earlier session, so you can watch it there. It is just that you have to download the Chrome driver exe, and wherever it is you can provide the location. So I will right click and copy the path and provide it here, and also make sure that you change these backslashes in the path to a single forward slash. Now if you are on Windows, double backslash will also work for you, but it is always recommended that you use single forward slashes so that it will work on Windows as well as other operating systems like Mac and Linux as well. So you can follow this on Mac or Linux as well. So here now I have set driver equals to WebDriver, and I have used Chrome browser and given the Chrome driver exe path. I will then say driver dot, and I will set implicit weight. So I will say implicit weight, and I will make this equals to 10, and then I can also say driver dot maximize window, so it will maximize my window during testing. And now I have to go to the URL. So here I'm going to use a demo application, which is this open source demo orange HRM. So here you can see this is a login page, and you can use the username admin and password admin123 to login. So I'm going to use this, and here let me copy this URL and make it available in the notes again so that you can refer it from here. So I will say driver.get and the URL, which is this, and then after this I have to add a username or enter a username. So I will do a right click on this username text box and go to inspect to check the properties or the locators available. And here if I inspect this, you can see we have this properties available, we have name available, and as well as we have ID available. So it is always good if you have ID, you can use ID. I will copy this and I will say driver dot find element. Now you can see you have lots of functions to find the element: find element by xpath, find element by link text, by name, by ID. So I'm going to use ID, and I will give the ID here, and then the action is I have to send keys, and I have to add the username, which is admin, and after this I have to add the password. So I will again inspect the password, and you can see we again have ID available for password text box as well. So I will take this ID, and here I will say driver dot find element by ID, and I will give the ID here and say dot send keys, and the password is admin123, and then I have to click on the login button. So I will inspect the login button now, and again here I can see the ID is available. So we have ID for login button as well. I will copy this and say driver dot find element by ID, and this is the ID, and here I have to say dot click. So this will click on the login button, and after this what I will do is let me manually log in. So once I log in to the application, I will go to the home page, and there is some problem. Let me just check. So I will give the username and password and login. Yes, now it's logged in, and once I go to the home page, I will click on this welcome link, and after I click on the welcome link I will click on logout. So let me inspect the welcome link here, and this is welcome, and I can see we again have ID available. So in case you do not have IDs on your objects, you can use XPaths or any other locators. So here I'm saying driver.find element by ID, and this is the ID, and I will say dot click, and then again I have to inspect the logout link. So again I will check for logout, and here you can see we don't have any properties. However, this is a link, so we can use this link text logout. So I'm going to copy this, and in Python Selenium we have a function called find element by link text and find element by partial link text. So I'm going to use this find element by link text. I'm giving the text here, and I will say dot click, and once this is done I will close the browser. So I will say driver dot close and driver dot quit to quit the browser, and then I will print test completed. And also I will add some wait time after this action so that you can see this running and it is not very fast. So for that I will import the time module, and here I can say time dot sleep for 2 seconds so that you can see what is happening on the screen, and now I can run this. So this is my simple test. I will do a right click and say run. So it will open the Chrome browser, maximize the window, and go to Orange HRM and logs in and logs out, and now you can see the screen, and that's it. It completed, and it is writing here on the console test completed. So we have done the very first step, which was to create a simple login test, and now we have to implement unit testing. So there are certain unit testing frameworks. So what I'm going to use here is the Python inbuilt unit test module. So I will say import unit test, and here I will say I will create a class. So I will say class, and I will say this is login test, and here in the brackets you have to say unit test dot test case. So we are inheriting from the unit test case class so that you can use the unit testing functions. So now I will create the functions here. So I will say def, and I will create a setup function to do the setup. Now there are two setup functions available. One is setup, which will run before every test method, and then we have setup class. This will run only once before all the test methods. So for doing the browser setup, we just want to run it once. So I'm going to use setup class here, and I'm going to take these three statements for setup, cut it from here and add it inside this function. Now here in Python, be very careful of the indentation, and you can see from the start of this function there is a tabbed space or 5 spaces. So whatever will be present as a tabbed space from here will be a part of this function. So indentation is important in Python, and let me put everything in a single line here. Yeah. So here also you can see there is a variable class. So we have to say here cls.driver and cls.driver here as well, and here as well. So you can name it anything. It is not necessary to name it cls, but then you have to use cls dot and then the driver name. So this is setup function. I will now create a test function. So I will say def. Now for test function, always start with the word test, and I will say login, and I will say valid. And it is always useful to give some meaningful names to your function so that you can see I have given login valid, and I can figure out that this is a test for a valid login. And now I will add the statements here. So all these test statements I am going to add in the function, So I will cut it from here and I will add inside the function here, and again make sure of take care of the indentation, and here it is using a variable self, so I have to say self.driver, and also you can name it anything. So I'm going with the default name, which is self, and I have to change all the driver with self.driver. So here now I am done with this, so our test function is ready, and now we have to do the tear down. So I will create a function for tear down, and again we have two functions available. Tear down will run after every test, and tear down class will run only once after all the tests are completed. So I will use this tear down class because I will be closing the browser only once after all the tests are completed, and these statements I will cut it from here and add inside the tear down class function, and of course you have to use this variable cls. So I will say cls.driver and here as well, and you can see our tests are complete. Now our unit testing is done. One thing that you should take care is, for when you are using the class functions, always provide the annotation at class method. So this is a class function, I have to provide the annotation at class method, and then similarly for tear down as well, this is a class function, so I will say at class method. Now this is ready, I should be able to run this. I can save and do a right click, and here I should get an option to run the unit test from this login, but I'm not getting it. So for that I will go to run and I will go to edit configurations, and you can see this login is coming inside Python, but it is not there inside Python tests, and this login is not the one that we are going to run, it is something different. So I can actually delete it from here inside the Python configuration, and I can click on this add button and I can say Python tests, and here I will go to unit tests and I will create a new configuration. So I will say this is login tests and I will select the module name. So let me select this login test from here, sample projects POM project demo. I will say OK, and in the Python interpreter I can use the project default and apply and OK. And now if I do a right click, you can see I'm getting the option run unit test from this module. So I will now run this, and it is opening the Chrome browser, maximizing the window and doing the login. So it was I think very fast, and you can see it has completed, everything is successful. And now if you want, you can run it from command line as well. To run it from command line, you can go to the location of this login.py file. So I will copy the location and go to the command line. So I'm going to my Windows command line. If you are on Mac, you can go to terminal, and very first thing is we have to change the location to the folder where the login where the file is, Python file is, and then you have to say Python and the file name. So if you run this, it is not running. Normally it runs the Python file, but because this is unit test, it is not running it. For that you can say Python -m unit test and the file name, and if I run this now, you can see it is now running it. So it is running our test, login and log out, and done. So here you can see ran one test in 9.3 seconds. Now if you do not want to use the -m unit test flag at the end of your file, you can add this condition. So at the end you can add if underscore underscore name equals underscore underscore main, then unit test dot main. So if you do this, now if I go to my command line and even if I do not use the -m unit test flag and I just say Python and the file name and I run this, it will still run your unit tests. So it is now logging in and log out. So logout is sometimes very fast, it is not even able to show on the screen, but you can see it is passing and everything is successful. So we have also added our unit testing. Now we have to implement page object model. Now what page object model is, let me go to Google and search for page object model, and here I will go to the images and let us see some images. So you can see this image, and here you can see the difference. So if you do not implement page object model, in normal cases what we will do is we will have a single class, and inside the class we will write our entire test scripts which will have the web element locators, their methods and the test methods, everything in the same class. However, when you implement page object model, then we have a separate class for web elements and the action methods on those elements, and the test methods are stored separately in a separate class. Also, if you look at this image, this also shows the same thing. Here we have a different package or a separate folder called pages, and for every web page there is a separate class. For example, login page has a separate class here, the home page has a separate class here, and then there is a separate folder for test or a separate package, and all the test goes inside this folder. So this is very useful when you want to create your entire framework, so that it will help you in easy maintenance and it will make the framework very efficient. We will see how to do that in a very simple way. So the very first thing is, when you want to implement page object model, we have to create a class for every page. So for example, we are interacting with two pages here. One is the login page and then the home page. So here on the login page, I will create a separate class for login page, and in the class I will have the locators for the elements I am going to interact. So on login page we have three locators or three objects: the username text box, the password text box and the login button. So all the locators will go inside that class, and also the actions. So here we are doing three actions: enter username, enter password and click on login button. So let us see what to do and how to do. So inside the pages I will create a new Python file. I will right click, new Python file, and say this is login page, and here, so you can see the Python file is here. Here I will create a class called, I can name it anything, I will say it login page, and inside the class the first thing we have to do is we have to create a constructor. And in Python we create a constructor by giving the keyword def and then underscore underscore init. So this is the constructor in Python, and this constructor is called every time when you create an object for this class. Now if you are finding a little bit difficulty in understanding this, do not worry, you just follow me and you will come to know why we are doing this. So you can create this constructor, and in the constructor I will take a argument for driver, and you will come to know why I am doing this. So for now I am just taking an argument called driver, and inside the constructor I am saying self.driver equals driver. So I am making whatever is coming inside this constructor as a driver instance, I am making this equal to self.driver. And now what I will do is I will add the objects. So here we have three objects: username, password and login button. So I will say self dot username, and I can say this is a text box, and also the locator I am going to use is ID. So this is very useful if you give some intuitive names, so somebody who will read this can come to know that this is a username object or a username element which is of the type text box. So this is text box, and the locator we are going to use is ID, and I will make this equal to the locator or the ID that we have found earlier. So I will take it from here, and here it is. So this is the ID we are using. I will copy it from here and provide it here, and then similarly I will say self dot password. This is again a text box and we are using ID as the locator, and I will copy this again from here. This is the ID and I will provide it here. And similarly the login button, so this is a button, and again we are using ID, and here again I will give the ID for the login button, which is this one. So now I am done with the three objects. So make sure in page object model you create a class for every page. I can add the objects for the home page as well here, but I'm not doing this because that will be against the pure page object model principle. Now what I will do is I will create the functions. So functions or the action method. So here we have to enter username. So I will create a function called enter username, and in the arguments I'm going to take argument for username. So whatever it will be given to this function will be used as the username, and inside the function now I can say this, which I was using in my test class. I will copy this from here and add it here. Self.driver.find element by, so this I will change with this self.username text box ID. So this username text box ID, and the value is whatever is coming as an input to this function, which is this username. So I will add this here, username. And also this is a good practice whenever you are working with any text objects, you can first clear them. So I am going to first clear this. I will copy this again and I will say first dot clear and then add the username, and the same thing will be done for password. So I will create another function def enter password, and again I will be taking a parameter called password. You can name this anything, and same thing goes here. I will copy these two statements and I will paste it here, and here I have to change this to password text box ID, and similarly this I will change. So this is self dot password text box ID, and the value is whatever we are taking as an input, which is this variable password. And then the next method is click login. So we have to click on login button. Of course we do not need any input here, we just have to click. So I will just use self.driver.find element by ID, and the ID is self.login button ID, and the action is click. So now you can see we now have this very simple page class for login page, and similarly we will create a class for home page as well. So here in the class we have created a constructor and we have added all the objects on that page and all the actions that will be done on that objects. So I will now create another Python file, and this is for the home page. So I will say this is home page, and here I will say class homepage, and the same thing I will be doing here. The first thing is we have to create a constructor, and inside the constructor I will take an argument or the instance for driver, and I will say self dot driver equals to driver, and now I will add the object. So if you go to the home page, I am doing a manual login here. So here in the home page we have two objects that we are interacting with, the welcome link and the logout link. So I will say self dot welcome, which is a link, and the locator we are using is ID, and this the ID is equal to, let me copy from my test script, this is the ID. I will copy it here, and similarly we have the logout, which is again a link, and we are using link text as the locator. This is link text, and again I will copy it from here and provide it here. So that's it. And now the actions. So we are doing just two actions here. I will create methods for that. The first one is click on welcome, and we don't need any arguments to be passed to this function, we just have to click. So I will just say, I'll copy it from here itself, and I will say here self.driver.find element, and here I have to use the variable that I have created here, which is self.welcome link id, and that's it. And then the next function is click on logout, and again I will provide it this statement. I'll copy it from here and add it here and change this locator to self.logout link text. So you can see now we have created a page for our home page as well, and now we will use this into our test, which is here login. So now what I will do is, you can comment all this out or you can delete everything. I am just going to comment this out for now. And now what I'm going to do is, I will be creating objects for the login page and the home page, and I will be using the functions here. So for that, the first thing you have to do is you have to import the login page and home page. So what you can say is from, and I will have to go to the parent folder, which is sample project. So I will say from sample projects and dot POM project demo dot pages dot the file, which is login page is the file name, and import the class, which is login page. And similarly for home page, I will say from sample projects dot pom project demo dot pages dot home page import home page. So this is the class home page, and now I can use the class and I can create the object for the class. So in the test function, the very first thing I'm going to do is I will create a variable driver, and I will make this equal to self.driver. And this I'm doing just because I don't want to use self.driver everywhere. I can directly use now driver. So I can directly say this driver.get. And then after this, what I am going to do is I will create an object. So I will say I'm going to use any variable. I will say login equals to, now I can create object for login page, and of course I have to pass the driver instance from here, because in the login page, whenever we create the constructor, whenever we create an object, this constructor will be called, and this constructor is accepting a driver argument here. So I am going to pass the driver instance from here, and now I can use this variable login to access all the functions from the login page class. So I can say login dot, and now you can see we are getting all the functions and variables from this class login page. So I am going to first call enter username, and I will give the username that is admin, and now I will call the function enter password and pass the password from here, and then login dot click login, and that's it. So you can see how easy and clear and clean this is looking. Similarly, I will now create a object for homepage class. So I will say homepage equals homepage, and again I have to pass the driver instance, and now I can use this variable homepage to access all the functions. So I can say homepage dot click welcome and homepage dot click logout. So that's it, and I can just remove these earlier statements. So I'm just going to remove all this, and also you can now see how clean our test is looking, and it is very understandable. And the other advantage of page object model is you don't have to now change or maintain all these objects and functions at multiple locations. For example, let us take this username. So in real world, this object or this locator username might be used in hundreds of test cases. Now, if there is any change or any maintenance required, you don't need to change it at hundreds of places, you just need to change it here. And similarly, this goes for the action methods. For example, enter username might be used in hundreds of test cases. Whenever there is any change, you just have to come here to the class or to the page login page class and just make the changes here, and it will be referenced from here in all the tests. So this is the main advantage of using page object model. And let us now check it. I will do a right click and run this. Let us run this and let us see. Yes, it is opening the Chrome browser, maximizing the window and doing the login and doing the logout, and everything is running fine. And you can see here we are getting the status, everything is completed successfully. So we have implemented page object model. We have also separated our test scripts from the objects. So you can see now the objects are located in their own classes and the test scripts are separate, and this is what we saw in this images as well. Now we have a separate folder called pages, and all the web pages have a separate class inside this folder, and for test we have a separate folder. And this is similar what we saw earlier. We have a separate classes for objects, their methods, and the test methods. Now let us also see how to create a separate document or class for locators. Now page object model can be implemented in slightly different way as well. There are different ways. I have told you the most easiest and straightforward way. Now some people also prefer that all these objects, like we have username text box, password text box and login button, and here we have for home page, all these can be stored in a single separate location and we can refer all of the objects from a single page. So let us see how to do that. I'm going to now create a third folder and I will name this as locators. So you can see the locators folder here, and inside the locators folder I'm going to create another Python file called locators, and here in the Python file I will create a class and I can name this anything. I will name this as locators, and now inside the class I'm going to add all the objects and their locators. So all the objects of the application, in our case we have a login page, so login page objects, and we have a home page, so here will come the home page objects. So let me just take the login page objects from here and copy it and provide it in the locators class here, and similarly for the home page I will take these two objects and provide them here. And of course, because these are class variables, there is no need to use self. I'm just deleting all the self variables here. So let me delete all the self variables, and yes, so you can see here we have all the objects, and similarly you can keep on adding all the objects and their locators in this file, so it can be become a very long document having all the objects of your entire application. Now how to refer this? So you can go to the page for the web page, you can go to the class, and here the first thing is we will have to import the locators class. So here I will say at the top I will have to say from I will have to go to the root folder which is sample projects, and then go to the child folder which is POM project demo, and again the child folder which is locators, and the file name which is locators, and I have to import the class which is locators. And now the class is imported, and now you can refer the variable. So for example, for the username text box ID, I can here instead of hard coding I can refer it from locators. I can say locators dot and username text box ID, so it will be referenced from the locators class. Also you can directly use it here as well. So here also you can say something like where you are giving your functions, you can directly use it. I can say locators dot username text box ID. You can do this as well, but it is always recommended that you use this first way, so that you get a list of all the objects you are using in this class at the top, and then you can refer it in your functions. So this is what you will have to do, and our test will still run fine. Let us try to run our test again and see. I'm doing a right click and run unit test, and it is going to Chrome browser, and yes, it is adding the username, password and logging out. So this is running fine, and now we have done this. Also see how to run from command line. So now if I go and run from command line, let me go to the command line, and you can see we had already tried it earlier, but if I try to run this now, I'm saying I'm going to the location of the folder where our test file is. So this is under test folder. I have gone to the location here, and then I'm saying login.py python space the file name, which is login.py. And if I run this now, you can see we are finding this error, no module named sample projects. So this is something that you will get when you have a nested structure of folders and you are importing classes from other folders. It will give you some problem while running from the command line. It will run fine from the IDE PyCharm, but from command line it will have some issues. So one thing that you can do is you can add this to your imports before importing that classes. So this is I will provide in the notes as well. So here, just before you have imports for these classes like the login page and home page, just before this you can give this here. Let me uncomment it. So I'm pressing Ctrl and forward slash on my keyboard to uncomment, and here I'm importing sys import os, and then I'm saying sys.path.append and this statement, and these dots will depend on the nested structure. So if you have three nested folders, you can give 3 dots here, or if you have 2, you can give 2. So let me try this out. If I go back to my command line and try to run this, so it is still not able to find the sample projects. So for that, what you can do is, if this does not work for you, what you can do is you can go to the parent folder. So in my case, the parent folder is sample project. So I will go to the parent folder, and you can see now I am on sample projects, and now here you can say Python, and you can use the -m flag. Okay, Python -m, and then you will go to the child folder, which is here POM project demo. So I will say POM project demo and dot, then again the child folder where my file is. So this is tests, so I will say tests, and then again now you will say the file name. So in my case this is login. So now if I run this, I'm still getting this error. So let me again go to a higher folder, which is Selenium, and now I will say Python -m, and I will go to the sample projects dot. I have to go to POM project demo dot. I have to go to tests dot login. So this is the file name, and I will try to run now, and you can see this is now running fine. And I will tell you the reason why it is not able to run from command line. So this is running fine now, and yes, you can see this is all running fine and ran test 1 in 11.75 seconds. So the problem here is, you can see we are importing from some different folders or some parent folders. Now this is not able to resolve at the command line. So in the command line, wherever you start from, so now I am starting from this folder sample project. So whatever is the import within the sample projects will be resolved now. Earlier I was directly starting from test folder, so it was only resolving the imports which are within test folder, and any imports which are outside test folder like these pages, it was not able to resolve. So this is how you can run from command line. And now let us see how to add the HTML reports. So we have already added the HTML test runner library, and you can again see if I say pip install html hyphen test runner, you can see this is already there. So now I can import it in my project. I will say import HTML test runner, and that's it. Now you don't have to make any changes in the test. At the end, where we have given this condition, if name equals main, in the brackets, here I will say test runner equals HTML test runner dot HTML test runner, and in the brackets I will say output equals. So here I have to give a folder where I want to save my reports. So you can see I have already created a folder called our reports here. I will copy the location and provide it here. So I'm just going to provide this here, and make sure you change the backslash with a single forward slash, and if you're on Windows, double backslash will also work, but always recommend it to use a single forward slash, which will work on all operating systems. And this will run our test and create the reports, and I have to run it from the command line. So I will now just run this, and let us try to see. Okay, so let me run this now. So this is opening the Chrome browser and running our test, and once the test is done, we should get the report. So you can see it is saying generating HTML reports, and now if I go to my reports folder, you can see there is a report created here. I will do a right click and say open in browser and go to Chrome, and you can see the report here, everything is passed. Let us also test it with the failure. So I'm going to create just copy this test case, the test case that I already have. So here I am going to just copy this, and I am going to paste it again, and I will say this is login test login valid. Let me say this as 2, and here what I'm going to do is let me do a wrong login or an invalid login. I will use something like a wrong username like admin1, and admin123 is the password, and I will say login, and it will show me this invalid credential. So I'm going to test this. So I will name this as test login invalid username, and here I'm going to say admin1, and of course I do not need anything from the home page. And then after this I need to check the message which is invalid login. So if I inspect this, I will just see, I can just inspect this. So there are no direct properties available, so I can always use some tools. So like ChroPath is one tool, it is a plugin for Chrome, and here if I select the relative path, I am getting this. So what I'm going to do is I will copy this, and in the login page itself, now I'm going to create another locator for invalid username, and this is message, and I'm using xpath here, and equals to this, and then I have to say, for example, I have to use a function def check invalid username message. So here I will also get the message as the input, and here I have to say so I can say what I have to say is driver dot find element by xpath, and whatever is the xpath, then I will have to get the text value out of this. So this is what I will be using. I will cut it from here, and paste it here. So the XPath is self dot invalid username message XPath, and I will get the text, and then I will assert. So I will say here I have to use self dot driver. Here I have to say self dot driver, and I have to get the text, so I'm getting it in a message variable, and then I will say self dot, I can say assert. Let me use assert equals. So let me do one thing. I will just return this. I am not going to store it here. I'm just going to return it. So whatever is will become, I will return the message, and in the test here, so this particular function will return something, and I will store it in a message here, and then I will say self dot assert equals message, and this should equal to this thing, invalid credentials. So let me just copy this, and I will say this should be equal to invalid credentials, and I'm actually checking it with something wrong, invalid credentials 123, so this should fail and show in the report. So let us try to run this. Let us see if this runs fine. I am going to my command line, and I will run this again, and let us see what happens. So here it is running the test, and actually it ran the invalid test at the first instance itself. So for that, what I can do is I can give some numbering here. I can say test, this is 01, and then underscore login valid, and I can say this, the other one is test 02 underscore, and this is login invalid username. So this will now run in alphabetic order in sequence, and let me now run this again. So this should first run the valid login test, and yes, this is running the valid login test now, logging out, and now it is running the invalid credential test, and it is generating the HTML report here, and here it is. So now let me try to see the report. I will do a right click, open in browser, Chrome, and here you can see the second one, there is actually a error. So if you view this, it is not able to locate with the XPath expression. So it's not able to locate the XPath expression. So here there was some error. However, the idea was whenever there is an error or a failure, it should be shown in the report, which we are now getting it. So you can troubleshoot this, why it was not able to get the XPath. And if I go and see in my login page, so this is the XPath I am using, and you can try with some other XPaths as well. So this is the error it was showing, but the thing was we are able to get the error as well as the failure we are able to get in the reports. So we have done this add HTML reports as well, and we have completed all the steps of creating a small sample project using POM, unit testing, and HTML reports. Now if you find any difficulty, you can check this video, and you can see the video 2 or 3 times so that you get all the concepts if you are a complete beginner. And if you have any issues or you face any difficulties, always try to troubleshoot first and take some online help. And still, if you are not getting to resolve some of the doubts, you can always message me, and I will try to help you as soon as I can. I hope this was very useful for you. Thank you for watching.